Well, I'll tell you what, it seems as though the market is sweating this Fed meeting that's coming up. I'll give you the evidence that I see from around the market and give you some important technical areas to look for in the charts. We'll go through the Nasdaq 100, the S&P 500, and the Russell 2000 in terms of the ETFs, QQQ, SPY, and IWM. We'll also take a look at Bitcoin TLT, which is tracking the 20-year US Treasury. And then also we'll look at gold prices just to show how the market is really setting itself up for what we could hear from Jerome Powell tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. By the way, if you guys want to see more of my commentary, see my buys and sells, my technicals, there's a link in the description for the Discord. I'll tell you more about that later. In the meantime, I'm going to put up here for you QQQ. There we are. And if we look at the Qs in terms of retracement from its peak all the way down to the lows to see how much of a retracement we've had, how much of a recovery from the bottom, we actually happen to be right around the 618 level on here. And so that's pretty darn important for us, not only 618, but also the 200-day just north of that. And we're just above the 50. So we're actually at a pretty critical level right now. That was a nice, strong bounce off the bottom here. The question is, are we going to sit on top that 200-day and flip bullish on this thing? Or are we going to come back down, maybe even form a double bottom, which I think would be absolutely incredible and a strong bullish signal to see, at least after quite a bit of pain to get us there. Now, mind you, you can see in the pre-market hours selling off just a little bit. We closed at about 485, almost 486. Pre-market hours as I make this video, about 482. I'm going to quickly draw a Fibonacci extension on here for you from the bottom to that peak in between and then down to the bottom after that. This right here, about 493, which is just north of the price action, just north of 200-day, is actually where we get one full movement from bottom up to that peak, down to this bottom, back up to that peak. We almost got there, and turning around before that could take us back down and looking for where that floor is. Will we come back down to the 786 or the 618? We're going to have to watch and see what happens on Wednesday. We do have a good setup for continued bullishness if it doesn't get spoiled. Moving over to SPY. Let me grab a hold of the Fibonacci retracement, because what happens when we drag that out is we see we actually sit on top the 618. Pre-market hour is actually just down below that. So right around 560, whereas we closed at 563 before. Staying in between the 50 and the 200-day on here is going to be absolutely gorgeous for us if that's where we're able to stay. Now, giving SPY the same treatment that we gave the Qs with the Fibonacci extension, I move that up a little bit so I can get a hold of that for you. Click on the bottom, peak right there, and then down there, you can see we made it on top the 786. Fell a little bit shyer of the one full movement, that 100% of the movement that we had back here from recent market bottom to where we found this bottom right here. That movement that we have, we didn't quite get the same movement that we got for the Qs, but big tech kind of outperforming for us once again from that bottom versus what we had in SPY. So if we go over to IWM, what do we see for IWM for that peak? That one's a bit more of one. And if I can click on that for you, we'll click on that peak and we'll drag that down to the bottom here, only making up to about the 38.2 from peak down to trough. And we expected that underperformance to happen for IWM, given that they're going to be more sensitive to inflationary pressures, to economic stress, if you will. And then they also need cheap and easy money, which we just don't have yet. So let the Fed have its way. When we get to the point of that easier monetary policy, we should get a lot better movement out of IWM. So right now, fairly subdued to what we had with the Qs and with SPY. But once again, as to be expected, you can see it's taken a much steeper tumble over that time with much less of a recovery. But when it does recover and put in those new all-time highs, that's something that that's going to be a pretty darn big move for us for the Russell 2000 stocks. They're going to have their day in the sun, even if it's not quite yet. And keep on coming back to the channel. Hit the subscribe button so you can see as I report that. Look, taking a quick look at gold prices. I talked about this before a couple weeks ago to talk about will we be able to break through this resistance? I said probably not, and you can see the sort of sell we got with the 20-period moving average coming up here, serving so far as support for those gold prices. Put it right in the middle of the support and the resistance that we had, setting up once again for that uncertainty in the markets. Gold prices kind of hedging back their way just in case Jerome Powell tells us something that we really don't like to hear, such as that we're going to, if they come off more hawkish, if you will, that monetary policy needs to remain restrictive for a while longer and that they're just not seeing the impacts yet from tariffs, which is a pretty big high likelihood that he's going to keep on stalling for a little while longer and probably end up back on their heels again, as the Federal Reserve typically tends to do. So moving over to TLT, struggling a little bit in the pre-market hours this morning because we still have that debt crisis to worry about for the United States for their debt, which right now we're fine, but that question is still out there. Is it manageable? Is it something that we're going to be able to handle over time and in times of significant economic stress should we get there? And as long as that question remains, we're probably going to see the prices subdued for TLT. The flight to safety so far has been gold, but then also Bitcoin has actually been holding up pretty darn well over that time as well. Definitely worth watching. We'll see if that strength holds out for Bitcoin, also putting itself dead in between these two rays. I should point to this part of your screen right here, because that really is the place that where we want to look for that resistance or that support down below. You can see we're just above a big fat support area here where there's a lot of buying pressure for Bitcoin, but we're also down below this resistance chop that we have to the north side of this. So the market is fairly nervous right now over what Jerome Powell has to say. We're hitting that moment of uncertainty that, okay, well, do we go long and risk on, or do we go short and risk off for this thing? And the market is just preparing itself, getting itself in a nice position, hedging itself against the risk in either direction. And like I said, there's a lot of evidence around the market to see that. And I also said, if you guys want to see more of my analyses, more of my buys and sells, me and the other panel experts who put out the stuff that we watch from around the stock market, crypto market, bond market, you can find the link down in the description for the Discord. Sign up for the earner tier, which gives you unrestricted access to everything that it has to offer. Just click on it. Read through the products and services. I think you're going to be very impressed by what you find, even more impressed by the community of thousands of members that have already signed up and are loving life over at the Discord. Guys, thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I am Dr. Stock, Doctor of Education. Remember, my friends, that learning is earning. We'll see you next video.